All right, I think we have everyone seated or getting there. We might have a few more people that are going to be trickling in just to fill up every available seat. My name is Greg Collish. I'm losing my voice a little, I apologize. I'm an LVCC board member and one of the organizers of this event. And first and foremost, I'd like to thank all of you for showing up. I think it speaks volumes about our community and our neighborhood that so many of you are coming out on just kind of a cold, miserable January day to be here. Obviously, I'd like to thank the candidates. I think regardless of who you're rooting for, or even if you're undecided, I think we can all agree that it takes a heck of a lot of courage to run for office and to be sitting in that spot right now. So thank you very much to all the candidates. The Center on Halsted, they've donated this space and just been amazing to work with, and they're tremendous people. This is such a beautiful space, so thank you to the Center on Halsted as well for donating their time. And we have 3 sponsors for this event, the Lakeview Citizens Council, and the 2 chambers, or the chambers as they'll probably be referred to throughout the evening. It's the East Lakeview Chamber of Commerce in Marine Martino, and a wonderful staff that they have. Yeah, thank you. And there's also the Lakeview Chamber of Commerce and Lee Crandall, who's somewhere here. And they really do great work. And this event took some organizing to get done, and I know there have been a few glitches, especially with seating and getting our messaging out, and you know, we're just going to work on that. But I really do appreciate all of your patience. That's really nice of you to be patient and understand that it's one of our first events in a while, so you know, we got it done. I see a few of you have some drinks, so you can, I think the bar's going to stay open. Yeah, right? You know, we sort of figured what better way to ensure that cool, calm heads prevail than to throw some alcohol into the mix, right? And for LVCC, I specifically need to thank Erica Pear and Mike Rafferty. They've done so much work. Yeah, give them a round of applause, please. Erica, raise your hand. I don't know if Mike's here, but they really did. This event wouldn't have happened without them. So I will go ahead and finish up here and just say that if you're interested in learning more about LVCC, our president, Will DeMille, is somewhere. Will, right there. Raise your hand higher, Will. If you don't know Will, he's a tremendous president for LVCC. He's also one of the nicest people you'll ever meet. So track him down. All right. Enough of me talking. I think everyone's gotten in and been seated. I'm going to go ahead and hand it off. Before I do, I would like to say I appreciate all those applause we just had. During the forum, though, we do ask that you hold applause for any sort of outbursts. All the questions will be asked by our moderator, Laura Washington. And yeah. Laura is, when she sent me her bio, she told me, well, that's what I'm going to say. It was overwhelming. I think it's safe to say that she's far and away the busiest media personality in the city of Chicago. You know her, you know her work. She's a Lakeview resident. She's an award-winning journalist, a columnist for the Chicago Sun-Times, a political analyst for ABC7 News. We are unbelievably lucky to have her donating her time and her talents. So let's give it up again for our moderator, Laura.
Thank you, Greg. Thanks so much. And yeah, one of the things I've been busy doing is wandering around the city, going to many forums like this, Aldermanic forums, mayoral forums, and it's so gratifying, as I've seen in many other places, to see the crowd tonight, to see the turnout for this. There's a lot of heavy interest a lot of excitement about these races, and that's a good thing for democracy. So give yourselves a round of applause for being here and caring. Can everybody hear me okay? My mic's on? Okay. So just want to go over a few ground rules, and then we'll get right into it. We've asked each candidate to make an opening statement of 2 minutes each. We have a timer up here who's going to help me keep them strictly to time so that we can get to as many questions as possible. Then we're going to have a series of questions from the chambers. 4 questions the chambers are proposing, and each candidate will have 2 minutes to answer each one of those questions. If a candidate is challenged by another candidate, the one who's been challenged will have 1 minute for rebuttal. Then we will have a series of questions from the audience. Those will be 1 minute responses with 30 seconds for rebuttals when necessary. We're going to close with 90 second, we're going to be here all night, 90-second closings. And I want to ask, again, as Greg pointed out, we don't want this to become a pep rally. We want to get to as much conversation as we can, so please hold your applause. I'm going to ask you to applaud when I introduce the panel in the beginning and then again at the end. Also, I want to ask the candidates to please avoid personal attacks. This is about your campaigns, about your issues, and we want everyone to be respectful, and we want to ask you as well to be respectful. And again, hold your applause to the end. So I'm going to introduce each candidate, and then we're going to just kick it off with opening statements, starting on my immediate left with Alderman Tom Tunney.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you, Tom Tunney, the current alderman, and hope to be your future alderman after February 26th. Laura, you have been an incredible asset for Lakeview and for the Chicago Media Club, so thank you for doing it, and thank you all for coming out. So I have been your alderman for the last almost 16 years to the day. I'm so fortunate to be here at this center on Halsted, which is what I believe, one of my crowning achievements as your alderman. First of all, securing this building, working with state and local and actually federal resources for this building. We opened this center I think it was about 2007. We also connected it to the first ever LGBT senior housing in the Midwest, 78 units of affordable housing. And of course, we, as many of you know, retained the 19th Police District station at this corner, which for so many years was threatened to leave our community. So as your alderman, as the first openly gay elected alderman in city council history, you know, I immediately went to bat not only for our community, increasing AIDS funding, and of course this amazing facility that we have here, but we also worked to make sure that our schools were not performing at the time except for Hawthorne Academy, and we've brought all our public schools to Tier 1. We worked with the Chicago Cubs prior to Mr. Ricketts owning the team on a plan development to preserve and to expand and give them the opportunity to compete. We also did that with Illinois Masonic and President St. Joe's, and obviously worked with big business and small business. And as a small business advocate on the city council, you know, it's every day that I work as tirelessly as I can to make sure the business climate and vitality of Lakeview remains, and it remains the safest neighborhood that we can possibly have. So thank you for the opportunity to present some credentials tonight to you.
Elizabeth Shalowski.
Hello, everyone. I'm Elizabeth Shalowski. I'm a working mom of 3. I have 2 teenagers and a 5th grader. My family and I have lived in Lakeview, or lived in Chicago for the past 23 years, but right here in Lakeview for 4. But I'm originally from Texas, and my story and my desire to serve you actually starts long ago. When I was 12 years old, my father died, and I watched as my mom struggled as she navigated to try to obtain survivor's benefits through the VA and through Social Security Administration. That process was very complex, and she had to deal with rude staff, and it was at that time that I decided I wanted to dedicate my career to public service. I've worked for people like Maggie Daly, founder of the Francis Xavier Ward School, as we raise money for scholarships for families in need, and for the Chief Judge of Cook County, Timothy Evans, to improve client services, and for Kay Bailey Hutchison on her legislative staff. She was the first female pro-choice senator from Texas. What I see happening here in Lakeview reminds me of what I saw as a 12-year-old girl. And that is government not necessarily working for the taxpayers, but working for political insiders, and that concerns me. So I decided that I wanted to run for office. I know that I want to be a full-time alderman for you. I'll be a unifying voice. I will wake up every morning to work for you, excited to do 3 things. First, keep our neighborhoods safe. I want an alderman who's going to acknowledge that there are problems in our neighborhood, and one that will fight to keep our neighborhoods safe and give our police officers everything they need to do so. Second, keep our schools strong. I want to keep our leaders accountable, and we need to invest in our children and do everything we can to have strong schools.
Thank you. Time. Maybe we get to it a little bit later.
No worries, I've got my
Austin Bates.
Thank you, Laura. And I would also like to say thank you to our hosts tonight and the Center on Halstead for having us here. I'm Austin Bates, and I want to be your alderman here in the 44th Ward. The 44th Ward needs an alderman who represents our values, an alderman who will fight corruption and end insider deals. I got involved in government after the Great Recession of 2008. It was caused by greed on Wall Street and bad public policy in D.C. The corruption drove me to get involved. I was proud to serve in the Obama administration and at the state of Illinois in multiple roles. At the state of Illinois, I was tasked with finding common sense ways to save money without cutting programs. I was able to save $55 million a year by consolidating leases. When I first got involved in government, it was to do practical things, like saving money, finding efficiencies, and making government run better. But in 2013, I saw firsthand the power of government to change lives. As the highest-ranking openly gay member of the governor's office, I was proud to join an incredible team of activists to pass marriage equality. 7 months later, my uncles, who just celebrated their 35th anniversary, came to Chicago to get married. It was incredibly powerful to see family members who would refer to my uncle's husband as his friend or his roommate come together to recognize and celebrate their loving relationship. I'll bring this same view of government to City Hall. I'll do practical things like fight corruption and end insider deals, but I'll also fight for progressive change for things like the $15 minimum wage and family and medical leave. We don't need a business alderman, we need progressive change. We need an alderman who represents the neighbors of Lakeview. Not the corporations, not developers, not political insiders, and not right-wing billionaires. I'm Austin Bates, and I'm asking for your vote.
Thank you. I wanted to remind everyone that we are taking questions from the audience when we get through this first round. And Greg and a couple other people are collecting your cards, so be sure you get them to them. And Greg's going to go through them and try to. We're not going to be able to get to them all, of course, but to go find ones where there's something in common and ones that are relevant, and he'll share those with me. So get ready. All right. So now we're into the round. We're going to be 2-minute answers again. And the first question goes to Austin Bates, and it's from the chamber, one of the chambers. As alderman, you would have to address issues regarding the operations at Wrigley Field. The number of night games, concerts, and the availability of alcohol on the plaza are all issues of concern in the 44th Ward. Would you support or oppose an increase in the number of night games and/or concerts in Wrigley Field? And do you favor or oppose increasing the availability of alcohol on the plaza? Support or oppose increasing night games, concerts at Wrigley Field? Support or oppose increasing the availability of alcohol on the plaza? Austin Bates.
Laura, I support the status quo at Wrigley Field. I think any changes to the status quo need to go through a robust neighborhood process. I live a couple blocks from Wrigley Field myself, and I saw this past year as traffic was diverted onto Cornelia. All of a sudden, Cornelia backed up all the way from Sheffield to Halstead, full of taxi cabs and Ubers, and we didn't have access to our residences. So I think it's very important for neighbors to have input into any changes at Wrigley Field, and I think we need to make sure that there are not adverse effects to neighbors, and I pledge as alderman that I am going to be the voice for neighbors. I also think that our neighborhood review process needs to be improved. I think we not only should have meetings, but we also should have an online presence for neighborhood review. Because I know many of my neighbors, they work long hours, they have to deal with kids in the evenings. It's very tough to get to neighborhood meetings. But we can use the internet to make sure that their voices are heard also in the process.
Thank you. Under your time. I like that.
Well, I think my record stands for itself. When I first became alderman, there were 18 night games. Through the negotiation of the plan development process, keeping Wrigley Field in our neighborhood, there was a compromise about expanding night games and also in lieu of public financing. What we were going to do to help the Cubs to stay. So we expanded night games from 18 to 43. We also gave them some flexibility because the Cubs said that they needed more flexibility in their schedule so that they win more pennants. Well, we gave them that flexibility twice, both from 18 to 30 and now to 43. Well, you know what they did? They didn't add night games. They added more concerts. That is not the spirit of what we were negotiating when we worked with residents and other businesses here. But that being said, I listen to my opponents here and they feel that they do the same thing, if not more. But let's talk about alcohol and the plaza. We, the city, gave them the first plaza license, first ever, to accommodate them to do events in the plaza and beer garden and put limitations. And also, what we did with that was just to keep them honest about the family-friendly events that are supposed to happen in the plaza. The yoga, the movies in the park, the ice rink. It's a 3-year trial license. It's also to keep them honest, to make sure that they're being good neighbors and doing family-friendly events. So I'm comfortable with the negotiations, and they're delicate, and we brought the residents, we brought Lakeview Citizens Council, we brought all the neighborhood groups together, and we do that monthly with our master plan. But that being said, we bring everybody together, businesses, other businesses, the chambers, and Lakeview Citizens Council, and we forged compromises, and we kept Wrigley Field in without using taxpayer dollars.
So just to clarify your position going forward, night games and concerts, are we at the limit for those and alcohol?
Well, okay, so we signed a new 10-year agreement, okay? So we will negotiate that at another 7.5 years. But let me tell you, rigorous process with neighborhood groups, with our chambers, and we're all at the table.
Okay, thank you. Now the next question is going to go to Elizabeth first, and that is, rising property taxes are of serious concern for many residents in the 44th Ward. What will you do specifically to control rising property taxes, and how will you address the budget shortfall that a reduction in property tax revenue might cause?
First and foremost, our TIF funding program has got to change. I would call for a moratorium. 1/3 of our property taxes go to TIF funding. 1/3. Think about how much our property taxes increased. Alderman Tunney did vote for a $500 million tax increase, which then caused our property taxes to go up by 30%. 1/3 of our property taxes go to TIF funding. I call for a moratorium on that. I want fiscal transparency. I want to know where these projects are. Who is the vendor? Who are the vendors? Who are the people that benefit from these projects? Our schools, I know that our schools are supported by our parents. It's not by CTS and it's not by the mayor, and an alderman will do what they can, but if parents can no longer afford to live in Lakeview and they move, the schools will fail. And what happens to a neighborhood when the schools fail?
Tom, I'll give you a chance to respond to her comment about the property taxes and your property tax vote.
So this is a rebuttal, basically?
Yes, right, 1 minute.
Okay. Well, I think my challenger here has her numbers wrong. I do not believe that 1/3 of property taxes are diverted to TIFs. So I just want to say that.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
And I also agree. Well, first of all, and the fact that your tax dollars, 58% of your property tax goes to fund public education. So I don't know exactly, I know parents support an additional funding, but we have all public schools funded here, 58% of your tax bill goes to that. Now, if you want me to respond to property taxes,
go ahead.
I would be happy to do
ahead
that.
and respond to that question.
I totally agree that our property taxes are too high in Lakeview, and because we, as the state of Illinois, are over-relying on property taxes to fund education. It's ridiculous that 60% of your property taxes go to fund education. We rank 49 out of 50 in state funding for public education. That is going to change under Governor Pritzker with my support. And I feel that there needs to be property tax relief for a progressive income tax on the highest net worth and net income individuals. So, there's other ways to do it. I don't think TIF is the answer. We don't use TIFs in the 44th Ward, except for the red purple line. Now that we're doing transit for the infrastructure that's happening based on President Obama's work and lack of a state budget, we had to do an RPM. But in the RPM budget, red purple line, no diversion of funds for schools. So I agree, property taxes are too high. We've got to do a progressive income tax and other ways to fund education besides relying on the property tax. The problem is the valuations have gone up in Lakeview. The recession is over. And you know what? Your property taxes are based on assessed valuation. And if the Ricketts family didn't put $1 billion into Clark and Addison, that's going to affect everyone's property taxes. So it's a good thing. The question is, we need relief for long-term property tax owners, seniors, and long-term businesses. And that's why I put a resolution and passed through City Council for property tax reform, working with Fritz Kagi. Thank you.
Austin Bates, same question, rising property taxes, and what will you do to address that?
Laura, property taxes have increased astronomically in Lakeview. I know my property taxes personally have gone up 31% in the last couple of years. And as I've been going door to door, I've been talking to residents, and I've heard stories in excess of 50% property taxes going up. And when you're trying to do your family budget and your property taxes go up that much, it makes it really tough to make ends meet. So let's go back to the cause of property taxes going up. It's corruption and it's insider deals here in Chicago. It's the property tax system where our properties are assessed higher and everybody has to hire a property tax attorney to get their property taxes reduced to what the actual levels should be. So that system that benefits political insiders needs to be ended, and we need to have proper assessments. Second thing is with TIFs. TIFs are an absolutely horrible idea that diverts property taxes away from the general fund. Discussion in the last month has been around this Lincoln Yards TIF. Lincoln Yards is located between Lincoln Park and Bucktown, two of the most dynamic neighborhoods in the city. And if we can't get development in between two of the most prosperous neighborhoods in the city without a $1.2 billion incentive for the developer, so get this is a $1.2 billion in property tax revenue going into a slush fund for the developer. And what's going to happen in Lincoln Yards, there's thousands of residences there. The people who live there are going to want to use the schools, they're going to want public safety, and how's it going to be funded if it's not through their property tax revenue? It's going to be through our property taxes going up again. So I absolutely oppose TIFs. We need to end these insider deals that benefit the few.
Thank you. The next question from the chambers will go first to Tom Tunney. The neighborhood business districts play a huge role in shaping Lakeview's character. It's one reason why so many people want to live in the 44th Ward. However, with the recent rapid policy changes, such as increases in the minimum wage, sales taxes, the bag tax, and others, many local businesses are struggling to be successful. Vacant storefronts don't benefit anyone. Specifically, what would you do locally to help small businesses? What citywide policy changes would you support and pursue to help small businesses?
Well, Laura, I, as a small business owner and actually one of the founders of the Lakeview Central Business Association, one of the reasons I got into City Council is to have that voice represented it in a number of negotiations. So I will be criticized because I did not support the minimum wage as was proposed, because we as small business people were trying to, number one, provide health care for our employees, which I personally do, and also the rate of rise was way too quick, too fast, and the internet was also challenging our retail businesses. I have worked collectively as the small business voice on City Council, and I do walk the walk. I meet payroll every two weeks, and everybody wants to make more money, but we got to keep businesses in business. Now, speaking of vacancies, this neighborhood has the lowest vacancy rate in the entire city of Chicago. A couple days ago, I literally took my car and I counted the vacancies on our commercial streets. And we have more than a 95% occupancy rate. If specifically, I'll talk about Southport. Lee Crandall's here. 4 empty storefronts from Belmont to Grace. There are 16 vacancies on Broadway from Diversey to Stratford. Clark Street has more, it's 24, and Boys Town has about 10. So what we're doing on Clark Street, as obviously with Clark and Addison, is we're bringing huge economic development. We're adding 200,000 square feet of retail. We're doing transit-oriented development at Clark and Belmont, the Target store. We're bringing more customers to Clark Street with TOD developments. 3,300 is the next one. So we're trying to add density more and anchors, Mariano's, Whole Foods and such, because those are the ones that are keeping more foot traffic on the street, and you as a small business need to capture that foot traffic.
Thank you. Austin Bates, to you next. What would you do to help small businesses who are struggling?
So, unlike Alderman Tunney, I do think we have a problem in the ward with vacant storefronts. When I walk down Broadway, we just opened our office at 3127 North Broadway. I see the vacancies on Broadway. And one of the reasons that I moved to this neighborhood 15 years ago was it's a vibrant, walkable neighborhood. And when we have vacant storefronts, all of a sudden the neighborhood's not vibrant anymore. And the issue with vacant storefronts is not going to go away. A lot of it's driven by online shopping. And I noticed at my building, 15 packages seem to arrive every day. So that's not going to change. But we actually need to come up with a strategy to deal with the vacant storefronts. And I think the first thing we need to do is get rid of the property tax deduction that you get if your storefront is vacant. So landlords should not be able to take a property tax deduction if the storefront's vacant. I think that's a perverse incentive. Second thing we need to do is we need to bring neighbors together to start talking through solutions, because I don't necessarily have all the answers, but having a neighborhood discussion really can help out. But some of the things we can try are art spaces, community gathering spaces, tax credits for small business startups. But the vacant storefront issue is not going to go away on its own. We need to aggressively attack it.
Elizabeth.
I think more in terms of the small business owner that is just starting out and how complicated that process is here in Chicago. Things are made complicated by design for a reason. It's to get them with special fees and complicated forms, like I was talking about early on, why I wanted to get into public service. We need to make it easier on our small business owners to create their businesses and to have longevity. We have some small businesses right here in Lakeview. Think about places like Intelligentsia and Pastoral and places that were the first that now have changed, that people from all over the city come to. Those are thriving small businesses, and I would like to go to those business owners and have them create a mentorship program for others that are just starting out. Like I said earlier, we need each other, but we also need to stop things like aldermanic privilege that make small businesses feel like they have to be beholden to their alderman to get a permit. We need to cut all of that out. When I'm alderman, I want anybody, resident, large business, small business, to come to me and say, hey, I've got a holdup with this permit. What can you do? Happy to help. That's my job. And if they say something like, well, what can I do back for you? I'll say, well, nothing personally, but hey, Nettlehorse School happens to need, I see you're doing a lot of construction in your business. They need new bathrooms. They can't afford it. Do you think you could connect us to this person that might be grateful to have this business and they could give us a discount to redo the bathrooms at Nettlehorse? I told that to a couple of business owners and they were taken aback. Wow, that's refreshing. That's the kind of stuff I want to do. I want to have our businesses partner with one another to help each other.
Thank you. The next question, we'll start with Tom Tunney and just go down the line. This is about development on Clark Street. More than 15 parcels of land around Clark Street are up for sale by the CTA for remodernization of the red and purple lines that came up a moment ago. As Alderman, how would you see your role in the redevelopment of Clark Street? Specifically, what will you do to recruit unique offerings that will not only maintain a vibrant commercial district, but also complement the streetscape?
Laura, the Red Purple Line modernization includes a redevelopment plan of over $1 million to do community planning prior. We've already been through the planning process working with the chambers and the neighborhood resident groups. It will allow for more density on the redevelopment. It would provide for, our goal is to do at least 20% affordable housing, mixed-use development. Most of the buildings that were taken down had no residential above it, or very little residential above it. So we're going to add density, add more affordability, hopefully more for more customers. But we have already engaged the community on a plan. We negotiated at least $1 million of redevelopment. We hired consultants. We're reducing the parking requirements because it is a pedestrian-oriented street. And I'm excited because what happened with the Brown Line reconstruction is there was no plan in advance, and we sat on property, fallow property, for a number of years. We are not going to do that under the Red Purple Line modernization, and that's been pre-approved. The scope, the framework, the density, the TOD attributes. And so I'm excited about it. Certainly I didn't want any of our buildings to come down, but public transportation is the key to our community and the key to economic development. This structure is 100 years old. It was at core capacity. This was not about getting downtown in 3 minutes sooner. It was really, how do we increase capacity during the whole line from basically Howard all the way downtown. And so the economic development was part of the planning process, and we did engage all stakeholders to be part of that.
Thank you. Elizabeth.
Would you please repeat the question, because I feel like a lot was covered.
More than 15 parcels around Clark Street are up for sale by the CTA for the remodernization of the red and purple lines. As an alderman, how would you see your role in the redevelopment of Clark Street? Specifically, what will you do to recruit unique offerings that will not only maintain a vibrant commercial district, but also complement the streetscape?
Well, first and foremost, I would want to include people like the Lakeview Chamber of Commerce and local businesses that are thriving, and residents, to get their ideas and input for what they think has been working here in Lakeview and what we are lacking. We have some of the most incredible small businesses, little boutique shops here that do drive business here. But once we can start making it a little easier for people to get to our neighborhood, I feel, well, safety is also a part of that, a safe way for people to get to our neighborhood. I'm concerned about any considerable infrastructure costs because we do have a budget problem, and I want to make sure that our investments go toward our schools and our safety first. But like I said, I would want to include all of our small businesses and people, especially around that area, that could be affected by any changes. We already have issues with traffic flow, shortage in parking, which was sold off to Chicago Parking LLC. So we need to address things like that first.
Awesome.
So first, I want to say that I oppose the Belmont flyover. I think it was a ill-conceived idea when there are technological solutions to peak shaving out there, and with your venture card, you could easily have figured out who rides the L, given them a coupon for coffee in the morning downtown, and worked with businesses down there to get people to actually spread out their commutes. because the issue with capacity on the red line is based on everyone riding the train between 7:30 and 9 a.m. So you can do peak shaving to solve that problem. So I'm very disappointed that we didn't try technological solutions before we spend millions of dollars and tear down a bunch of businesses. I think the second thing is alderman. Your alderman is your voice against these voice to these big city agencies. So as alderman, I'm gonna be your voice to go to the CTA. I was talking to a homeowner whose house is just south of Addison that backs up the L. They used to park underneath the L. The CTA decided that, oh, we're gonna work with Spot Hero and we're gonna rent out your parking spot. CTA didn't come to the resident first and say, oh, you know, I can rent the parking spot. CTA can rent this parking spot to the resident. They went right to Spot Hero, cut the resident out of the process. So as alderman, I'm gonna make sure that I'm the voice for residents. And I think the third issue is the SSAs. On Clark Street, the SSA is spending $150,000 a year for additional security on Clark Street, which the police department should be providing. That $150,000 a year should actually be going to promote business and bring business into the community, promote the street. So I think we need to fix the broken system.
Thank you. I'm glad you brought up safety and security, because now we're going to move to the audience questions, and we have some very good ones up here. And I just want to remind you that the audience questions, you'll have 1 minute each to answer, and if there is, if your opponent is brought up, then we would allow for a 30-second rebuttal. This first question about public safety is about the police department. When 19 and 23, I assume they're talking about districts 19 and 23 were combined, we were promised that we were not going to lose police department headcount in the combined district. Our crime is outrageous. We need that headcount. What is going on that will return that headcount, and what can we expect? And Austin, I'll start with you. Obviously, you weren't involved in that decision-making process, but what is your view on that, and how would you address this issue going forward?
So I was talking to my neighbor, Connie, a couple weeks ago. She lives just around the block on Newport, and she's afraid to go up to the 7-Eleven after 9 o'clock at night. And that's wrong. Everyone in our neighborhood deserves to feel safe in our neighborhood and at home. So I think, getting an echo. So I think public safety is important, and we need to make sure our police department is properly staffed and properly trained. The problem with the city of Chicago is the corruption and insider deals divert too many resources away from public safety and what we care about. So we need to end corruption, stop the insider deals, and make sure that we're funding what residents want, which is public safety.
Elizabeth.
When you're alderman of the 44th Ward, you serve the residents of the 44th Ward. You're not the mayor of Chicago. You're not to be a rubber stamp for the mayor of Chicago, and you're here to protect our residents. We want to make sure our police officers have adequate staffing, they have all the resources that they need to do their jobs, and that they have our support. Right now, they don't have that. And as alderman, I will ensure that I work with all of the beat officers, include all of our neighborhood groups, and ensure that we have sound solutions to keep all of our neighbors safe. My children, I have 2 teenagers and I have a 5th grader. We moved to Lakeview, we pay the property taxes here in Lakeview for a safe neighborhood. And it's very frustrating to have your teenagers roll their eyes at you enough, but to have them roll their eyes at me because I'm afraid of for them to take out the garbage at night, it's too much. We need a safer neighborhood.
Can I ask you?
Yes.
You're looking for sound solutions. Can you specify what solutions you think
Well,
we should?
first and foremost, we need to have all the officers that are allotted to us. We pay the property taxes for them. We should have them. I also feel that if I want to engage our beat officers and ask them what do they need to do their jobs. In my experience at the federal, state, and county level, what I have found from government workers that I've worked with across the board, their supervisors typically do not ask them their opinions, and if they give their opinions, it's do your job, this is the policy, go do that. I want to engage everyone.
Tom Tunney, policing.
Policing. I wanted to mention a few things. My opening remarks were, we did get the last police station that's built in this neighborhood. Many of you worked with us to keep the old 23rd Police District, Addison and Halsted, to serve not only Lakeview, Boys Town, Wrigleyville, and such. I agree that we were promised no loss of resources, and that's why I cannot support Gary McCarthy for mayor. He was the one who said that this was just a consolidation and we wouldn't lose sworn strength. We did. In the last 3 or 4 years, what did we do? We've added 50 more police officers to the 19th district. We have the new nerve center with the highest technology. We relit relit the entire ward for improved lighting for safety. We worked with the SSAs and for private security to augment the police department. And we go to CAPS meetings all the time. And honestly, I don't think I've seen either of my opponents at a CAPS meeting in the last 4 years. Well, other than when they announced that they were going to run for alderman.
Elizabeth, is that the case? You were going to respond?
I've lived in Lakeview for 4 years, and I've been attending CAPS meetings probably for about 9 months prior to deciding to run. And I started attending those meetings because, well, people on Facebook are really good taking back Lakeview. It's changed names a couple of times, but hearing about everything that's been going on, I wanted to hear about it myself.
Okay. Well, thank you. Austin, have you attended CAPS meetings?
I have attended CAPS meetings also. And my big disappointment with CAPS meetings, and for those of you in the audience who've attended them, is we go through the roll call of everything that's happened in the neighborhood, but we don't have a good discussion on proactive solutions and how we had a carjacking over on the street and what we're going to do to prevent this in the future. So I think we need to change the format of our CAPS meetings and have them more focused on solutions rather than just on what's happened.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to come back to something that Tom brought up, and that was the minimum wage. There's a question: do you support the minimum wage increase, and do you think $13 an hour constitutes a living wage for a person living in the city? Now, Tom, you already said that you did not support I don't want to misstate what you said, that you did not support the minimum wage as it was proposed. Is that correct?
As it was proposed, and how quickly it rapidly went up from basically 8 to 13 in 3 years, and we as employers trying to provide health care for all our employees at the same time, which is a huge expense. Okay. So that being said, we're dealing with it, and there's been actually a lot of sea change in the way we serve our customers, and I see it at Mariano's where there's no checkout people. You go and self-serve, and this is the nature of what's happening. So we're dealing with it. We want to keep our businesses there, but we also want to respect the fact that they meet payroll every 2 weeks, and taxes, property taxes, unemployment taxes, workman's comps. This is a huge, it's not just the wages, it's all these payroll associated costs. And I live it, and I try to make ends meet every payroll, and I respect employers that do that and continue to do that and stay in this neighborhood.
Elizabeth, do you support the minimum wage increase, and do you think $13 an hour constitutes a living wage?
So a couple things. First of all, that is a safe position for Tom to take because Pritzker's already said he's going to raise the minimum wage. So it's going to happen whether he supports it or not. Second of all, I think that when we start talking about, this is related to affordable housing. I was running one of the questions on one of the many Aldermanic questionnaires that are sent our way is, with regard to affordable housing, the threshold is $45,000. Well, if you're going to make $45,000 a year, and that constitutes your eligibility for affordable housing, that's more than $20 an hour. $13 an hour isn't going to even help you get there. So I've worked in nonprofit for quite a long time, and I think there are other solutions and there are better ways to help our families. We want diverse, we are a very diverse ward. So and that also means economic diversity. We want to try to encourage that. Metropolitan Planning Council suggests 10% affordable housing across the board.
We're actually having a question about housing coming up, which we will get to in a second, but I want to get Austin in on the minimum wage first.
So $13 an hour is not a living wage. I support a minimum wage increase to $15 an hour, and I think it's morally the right thing to do. someone who's working 40 hours a week should be able to make enough money to support their family. So I support the $15 minimum wage. Just a question here for the audience. How many people in the audience agree with Rahm Emanuel 97% of the time? So one person. I didn't see Alderman Tunney raise his hand because he's voted with Rahm Emanuel 97% of the time. One of the times he didn't vote with Rahm Emanuel was on the minimum wage. He was one of 5 aldermen to oppose increasing the minimum wage from $8.25 an hour. How can people feed their families on $8.25 an hour? So I think he's made the absolutely wrong decision on this, and I support raising the minimum wage to $15 an hour.
Tom, you get 30 seconds to respond if you'd like.
Well, I think Elizabeth brought up a good point. Part of the problem is that Chicago is not an island in and of itself. So I applaud Governor Pritzker for doing the right thing from the county and the state to level the playing field for the state of Illinois. And I certainly applaud any, on the federal levels, of increasing minimum wage. We know wages need to go up. But I remember I employ thousands of people. I take people that from high school, I get people that are seniors, I get people that are not necessarily there to support a family of 4. So this economy has to work for everybody. Not every job is supposed to support a family of 4. That's not how this economy was built. It was built to give people opportunities and to hire as many people with many different economic needs. And so I stand by my record. I've been criticized for it, but I can tell you that we are dealing with the reality, and employers are going to do the necessary things to keep in business. And I appreciate them, and I know how hard they work. Sometimes the employer is the last person to get paid. I'm sorry. There's years I worked and I didn't get paid at all. But I take the risk and the responsibility, and I'm proud to do it.
Elizabeth, I'm going to throw this housing question to you. The person that wrote this says, I believe housing affordability is a huge issue that no one is talking about. Aldermanic prerogative for zoning matters has had an impact on affordable housing. How will you keep Lakeview and Lakeview East affordable?
So I've been talking with people involved with the Chicago Realtors Association because I wanted to find out from them and from local realtors and from developers in the area that I've talked to. They all say the same thing. The process in the city of Chicago makes it unbearable to even try to, when you want to build a building, you're dealing with DOA, I believe it's what it's called. Department of, can you help me out with that, Tom? Department of
Housing?
No. It's on Superior Street. It's a very complicated, it's a court. And basically, it's a complicated court, Department of Administrative Hearings. You go there and you pay ridiculous fees for every single thing, and they make it impossible for landlords, for people who want to provide affordable housing, to even make it happen. So again, talking about that threshold, that $45,000 a year threshold, it makes it very difficult for any family to even qualify for that.
Thank you.
We'll have to go on another question for it.
Austin, affordable housing.
So yes, I think we need more affordable housing in the neighborhood. I was really proud. I was on the board here at the Center on Halsted for 8 years. And while I was on the board, I was really proud to participate in the LGBT senior housing project that we did next door. So we have almost 100 LGBT senior affordable units. And my role in the project was ended up working to land a $1 million state grant to end up finishing the project. So it's a great project. I understand affordable housing, and we need more projects like that in the ward. But the underlying thing that affects affordability in the ward is property taxes and how much we pay in property taxes here. And we need to get our city government, the corruption, the insider deals, we need to fight against those so that our property tax revenue goes to the things that we want it to go to.
Tom, what is your view on what we can do to make housing more affordable?
Well, my pledge to this community back in 2003 was to maintain all affordable housing in the ward and actually expand it. So how did we do it? Let's talk about the LGBT senior housing. Austin, there's 78 units in the building. It was $22 million of money. So I applaud your $1 million contribution from Springfield. But here's what we've done. Okay, we got the mayor to basically underwrite the cost of the land, $6 million. You have to have free land basically to do affordable housing. We don't have any land, available land, and nothing's free. But let me just say, we maintained 270 units at 501 Surf, 25 million in investment there. LGBT housing we talked about, Greenview Place, 100 units, Buffett Place, the old Diplomat. That cost us 24 million for 50 units for people with mental challenges. And you know what? I got grief from the neighbors. So we're all into affordability, but we want to make sure it's on every block. Not in this city, not just in this ward.
Okay, thank you. Embedded in that question about housing was the issue of aldermanic prerogative, and I'd like to pick up on that and come back to you, Tom. There's been a lot of kind of discussions in the news about this lately, particularly around some of the allegations of corruption and aldermen having maybe too much influence in their wards. What is your view on aldermanic prerogative? Do you think it's something that should continue in City Council?
Laura, can I ask you a question? How do you define aldermanic prerogative? What does that mean to you?
The way
You've had a lot of debates on this.
The way I understand it is that the aldermen have basically first right of refusal on any major issue that comes up in their ward. If the alderman wants it, it happens, and most of the other city council will go along with them. If the alderman doesn't want it, it doesn't matter.
Well, here's what I say. What I believe is the neighborhood has the priority, and we're the elected official. If we don't stand up what we think is right for our neighborhood, then we're going to get a different alderman. So I'm here as the voice of the residents. It's not me. It's the residents and businesses that I represent. So this is not my prerogative. I am here to represent the residents of this neighborhood and how they want to see their neighborhood. That's why we did a master plan. Talked about how we see a positive way of this approach, and included affordability. So, if there's an issue in Alderman Kappelman's ward, he's in front of those voters every 4 years. I don't live and breathe the issues on those particular blocks. But I must say, affordable housing needs to be in every neighborhood, and that's where this is coming up. Mm-hmm. People don't want affordable housing, or people not like them in their neighborhood. That's wrong, and that has to change.
Austin, what is your view on aldermanic prerogative as I've tried to define it here today?
So, I do think aldermanic prerogative needs to be rolled back. So I think when we have affordable housing goals for the city, and every alderman can talk about, yeah, I believe in affordable housing, but then when push comes to shove, everybody wants affordable housing in a different ward. So we need to really come together as a city and have the conversation, and we do need to have affordable housing in every ward in the city. I also think that when you talk about affordable housing, it gets back to property taxes again and how much we're paying in property taxes. And one of the people who's endorsed me is Dick Simpson, the former alderman of the 44th Ward and a big anti-corruption advocate in the city. And what Dick Simpson has estimated is that corruption costs the city $500 million a year. And we talk about why we're paying so much in taxes, and even landlords who have to raise rents because of property taxes. Okay. It's because of this corruption that's costing the city real money. Okay. And we need to end that.
But you said you think aldermanic prerogative should be rolled back but not necessarily eliminated?
Correct.
Okay. Elizabeth.
So earlier in my introduction, I didn't get to the third thing that I would do for you every day. And one of those, and the third thing is in corruption. The recent scandal with Ed Burke has shown everybody, and finally everyone's going to stand up and fight against this, I hope. Voters now have a choice, and we're going to clean house in City Hall and elect a brand new mayor. Aldermanic privilege, I believe, needs to stop. I do believe that aldermen should engage with their communities and get the input of their residents and fight for what the residents need in City Hall. But this notion that that the alderman is king of the kingdom, it goes back to what I told you earlier. Public servant. I don't want to be the king of the kingdom. I want to be your public servant.
Since we're on Alderman Berg, the man of the hour, if not the year, I want to run a few other reform ideas that have been suddenly very popular, and just quickly go down the line and see where you stand. I'm starting with you, Austin. The three things that I'm hearing most about, in addition to limiting aldermanic privileges, term limits for the mayor and for aldermen, limits on outside jobs, not allowing aldermen to have outside jobs, and rotating committee leadership so that someone like Ed Berg can't run a powerful committee for 30 years or whatever. So also those three things: term limits, limits on outside jobs, and rotating committee leadership. Where do you stand? Yes, no?
So I am a supporter of a two-term term limit for aldermen. I've already collected almost 2,000 signatures here in the 44th Ward in the last month to support term limits. So.
Okay, what about mayor?
For mayor, I support that also.
Okay. Outside jobs and committee leadership?
No outside jobs.
Okay, and committee leadership?
And rotating committee leadership is a good idea, because it goes back to the term limits thing. We need fresh ideas in city council. We don't need an alderman who's been in office for 49 years.
Elizabeth.
I support term limits. I also believe voters should have a choice. 25% of the aldermen in City Hall were appointed. Lakeview did not have a choice. Alderman Tunney was hand-picked for you and placed here. You have a choice this time. I support term limits for both aldermen, for mayor, rotating city council memberships. Yes, absolutely.
Outside jobs?
Nope.
No outside jobs.
I want to be a full-time alderman.
Okay. Tom.
Well, let me just talk about term limits. We are term limited every 4 years. We come before you and plead why we think we're the most effective leader. And you know what? It takes a couple of terms to figure out how to be the most effective leader you can be for your community. So that being said, I'm not for term limits. I am for rotating chairmanships. And I'm also for Ed Berg never being involved with a workman's comp situation. That should have always been in finance, and I was trying to find out from Inspector General why that happened, but we can talk about that later. Outside income, I think fully transparent. I obviously do not agree with that. I am a full-time alderman. I'm actually full-time and a half. And I devote my entire weekday and full-time, day and night, and actually weekends in the evening to my community. I do work at Ann Sather's, have for almost 40 years, developed a good team there. And, but I still feel that I need to be part and grounded in that. I gave up my liquor license. I did a lot to do this job, and I'm comfortable doing it. Both jobs, actually.
Applause at the end, please. This is a concern from a business owner. I represent the Belmont Theater District and 20 theaters in the Lakeview area. As one of the biggest industries in Lakeview, what is your plan to support and sustain this huge community of arts? I'll start with you, Austin.
I think arts are one of the things that we love in our community, and we get back to why did we all choose Lakeview as the community to live in? And it is because it's a vibrant, diverse community. So yes, supporting the arts is very important. I think that when we're looking at solutions, how do we promote our theaters? How do we bring more people into our entertainment district? It gets back to the SSAs and making sure that the funds for our SSAs go to what they're meant to go to. But because our city is messed up, resources aren't going where they should go, right now SSA monies are going for private security in addition to the police force. We should have enough resources and training for our police force that they can do the policing, and that the dollars in the SSA can go to promoting the different businesses in our neighborhood.
Elizabeth, how will you support the theater community?
So, like I said, I have a son at Nettle Horse School, and one of the things that I love so much is that we have many leaders in the arts community that come and provide services for free to our kids, teaching them drawings. Hubbard Street Dance comes out, teaching them dance lessons. I want to do more of that. I think that when we can engage our artist community and bring them out, whether they're out at Wrigley Field or at Gallagher Way to do exhibitions, whether we bring them into our schools to introduce art instruction to our children, I think that we really need to work as a community to support each other. And I think our art community, when I go to I believe it's the Lakeview East Chamber of Commerce that supports the art fair, it's packed. And I wish that we could do more of those things. So I think that let's have our community rally around our arts, also get recommendations for funding for them. Thank you.
Thank you. Tom.
Well, I have worked very closely with Lakeview's chamber, all the chambers, in regards to the Belmont Theater District. And personally, I actually helped build out Comedy Sports at the old Ann Sather space. So a large portion of my personal investment in that particular theater. But our business district our theater district is thriving. But let me tell you some of the pitfalls. One of the biggest pitfalls is limiting the number of night games at Wrigley Field, because we need to support the theaters too. And that has been one of the major concerns about the theater district, about there's no parking, I'm not going to Wrigley Field, I'm not going to the Wrigley area because there's a night game. So part of that is that neighborhood protections and business protections to diversify the kind of entertainment to make sure that our business district is thriving.
This one is on Lakeshore Drive redevelopment. Decisions that are now being made on the Lakeshore Drive redevelopment will likely have an impact on the community for generations to come. What specific redevelopment proposals would you like to see implemented on Lakeshore Drive that would best serve our community? Go to Elizabeth on this one.
Well, I think infrastructure throughout the city we're going to have a rude awakening. I was just on a webinar today with Metropolitan Planning Council, and it was shocking to find out how our railroads, Lakeshore Drive, we receive like a grade D on many of our infrastructure facilities here that we have in the city. It's going to cost a lot of money, so brace yourselves. As far as Lakeshore Drive is concerned, that's a major thoroughfare for us to get to work, for us to get anywhere in the city, and we're going to have to plan it out, because one of the things that I found is that when there's any sort of construction here in Lakeview, it seems that there's just no rhyme or reason to when it occurs. There's no advance notice, and there's no plan to reroute traffic and give residents enough time so that they can plan to get where they need to go.
Austin.
So, with regard to the Lakeshore Drive redevelopment, I think the first thing that has to be part of it that affects all of us when we're going downtown is the traffic light at Chicago Avenue and the amount that traffic backs up because of that traffic light. So we need to find a solution for that traffic light. But with regard to the overall redevelopment, I think what we really need to push with Lakeshore Drive is to add more park space. Our lakefront is one of the great assets of the city, and to have an 8-lane highway blocking all of us from getting to the lakefront, that's not right. So as we're looking at the redevelopment of Lakeshore Drive, we need to look at it as a way to add park space and to reduce the barrier of an 8-lane highway between us and the lakefront.
Todd. Lakeshore Drive.
So I've been on the commission of the redefine the drive for the last 2 years, and these public meetings. We actually had a meeting here, more than one here, so I would hope that we've engaged the community on how they see the drive. So the drive is a redevelopment from Grand to Hollywood, and it will include eliminating the stoplight at Chicago Avenue. But most importantly, how does it affect Lakeview? The Belmont intersection is dangerous for pedestrians, for everybody, and we are working on an engineering for redesign, giving priority to buses and bikes, and not just everything but singular vehicular cars. And the best thing that we're going to do about that is not to widen the lane or lose park space, but to do dedicated bus lanes during the evening rush hours and giving the priority for those mass transit users. And I think that's a key to it, and I suggest that there's a website, as you know, Redefine the Drive, and your input is there, and I know a number of people in this room have been at many of these hearings. And, by the way, it's not funded yet. if 50% has to come from the federal government.
Thank you.
And I don't think it's going to come under this administration.
Probably not. I want to come back to property taxes, which we touched on in one of the earlier questions. But this is this questioner wants to know what he or she asks is, everyone seems to think that we have too many taxes, but how do you propose to solve Chicago and Illinois' problems without a tax hike? And also, please address the inequities that poor wards of the city are suffering because of the inequities in the tax system. We know about the ProPublica and Chicago Tribune investigations from last year that showed that poorer wards in the city, particularly on the south and west sides, are paying a lot more proportionally for their taxes than wards like the 44th. And I'll start with you, Austin, on this one. Property taxes. Where are we going to find the money, basically, if we don't want to raise the taxes? And how would you address the inequities in the tax system?
And say all that in under 2 minutes.
One.
So, first thing is, one of the most corrupt systems in Illinois here is our property tax system. We intentionally get assessed high, so we have to hire a property tax attorney to get the proper assessment. So, first thing we need to fix is we need to make sure that properties are properly assessed to begin with. The second thing, when we talk about corruption in the system, is let's talk about Trump Tower. Trump Tower was supposed to pay $9 million in property taxes. Donald Trump hires Ed Burke. Ed Burke gets Donald Trump's taxes reduced to $3 million. But because of corruption in City Hall, the corporate counsel's office, the lawyers for the city, don't go back and challenge that ruling because it's Ed Burke, and Ed Burke is protected. So we need to fight the corruption to make sure that people are properly assessed. And Alderman Tunney is one of the people who's been protecting Ed Burke and this corruption.
Okay. I'll have to give Alderman Tunney a chance, 30 seconds to respond to that.
Well, I'm not gonna talk about my relationship with Ed Burke, but I am going to answer the question about property tax.
Well, no, you're not going to respond to that?
The accusation was
that you protected Ed Burke. Is that what you said, Austin?
Yes.
Yes.
in relation to property taxes, or I mean, this is a property tax question, so I'm happy to defend whatever.
Okay.
Okay, so in regards to if this is a vote about the Inspector General overseeing Ed Burke, we had a legislative Inspector General named Faisal Khan that was supposed to legislate. We're legislators. Joe Ferguson is the executive branch, so we had a system. Faisal Khan was incompetent. We also, as you know, the U.S. Attorney continues to monitor us and has monitored us forever. And they've been actually the most effective crime fighters in Aldermanic stuff. So okay. Patrick Fitzgerald lived in our neighborhood,
okay.
and as does Joe Ferguson. So I'm not protecting anybody, right. And thanks.
Okay, and while we have you, why don't you answer the original question?
I'm answering my question about property taxes. I said, we need to work with the new governor on reducing property taxes and a progressive income tax.
But where will the other money come from if you reduce taxes?
Some ideas is actually we've reduced our operating budget deficit from $600 million at the beginning of the Emanuel administration to 0 budget deficits. So we're creating a budget and living within our means on an operating budget. But also, and I know Senate President Cullerton is going to do this, we've been talking about a tax on services and to reduce the retail sales tax and look at how our stores are. It used to be 80% were retail goods, and now it's 80% services. Services don't pay any sales tax. So we've got other ways to come up with revenues without relying on property taxes. And the inequities is Fritz Kagi says that Lakeview residents aren't paying enough property taxes, okay? And that as you're saying, the west and the south side right. are overpaying. Mm-hmm. We're going to see what his results are, and I've already met with him about reform.
Okay, great. Elizabeth.
So it's interesting to me to hear Alderman Tunney talk about him going to be working with Fritz Kagi, because one of the reasons that upset me the most, that made me on that day decide that I wanted to run for alderman, was when I found out that in the assessor's race, he chose to stay neutral against Joe Barrios, who in this room did not know that Joe Barrios was a disaster, and a disaster for Lakeview. Our property taxes nearly tripled in the 4 years since we moved here to Lakeview. We have 3 children. We needed a bigger home. It's expensive to live here. It's expensive for all of us to live here. And we were planning on a certain budget for our house. We had no idea that Joe Barrios' office was going to make our house look like it would. I mean, the property value on our home just skyrocketed. And what followed after that? The vote to increase the percentage, that $500 million vote that Tom Tunney made, that then increased the percentage that we were going to get taxed.
Okay. Tom, did you want to respond further on that?
No, I don't think the tax was a $500 million property tax increase. But I did vote for property tax increase, so I will not.
Did you stay neutral in the assessor's race?
Yes, I did. Yes, I did. Yes, I did.
What was your question, Elizabeth? I didn't hear your question.
Did he stay neutral in the assessor's race?
I did not support Joe Barrios in his reelection.
All right. I think we have time for 2 more questions before we have to go to closing. So this one is again from the audience. It's about transit-oriented developments and housing density. Do you think transit-oriented developments, or TODs, are cramming more people into less space? Or are they vital to keeping our neighborhood businesses viable? Elizabeth.
I've been talking to a lot of neighbors about this issue because I didn't feel like I live in I live in a condo, but it lives like a single family home. So I was talking to a lot of young people, a lot of single people, and they are concerned about TODs. So I feel like I need more information, transparency. Who are the developers that might be involved in this? Who are the players that are going to be, I guess I'm trying to say I want to make sure there's no corruption in this process. I'm really distrustful of any new idea, any new venture that the city's trying to get into when it comes to development. There's a lot of campaign contributions that go to aldermen from developers and from builders, and you want to think that many of them are legit, but when there's these new projects, like I said, I feel like we really need to have transparency. I want to see budgets, I want to know who's involved, I want to know who's getting the business.
Austin, transit-oriented developments.
So, in general, I am supportive of transit-oriented developments. But what we need to be really careful of with transit-oriented developments, and the big benefit for developers for transit-oriented developments is that they have to build less parking. So what we need to do is we actually need to go back to the transit-oriented developments that have been built and evaluate how much parking they're actually using. And to make sure and test, because transit-oriented developments are fairly new in the city, we need to test and see how many parking spaces. If we're asking a developer to build 20% parking for 20% of the units, and we find that 40% of the units are parking, we got it wrong, and we need to change the rules. So I am supportive of transit-oriented developments. I think they add to the vibrancy, more residents to support businesses, residents that use public transit, but I think we need to evaluate to make sure they don't have an adverse effect on residents' parking.
Thank you. Tom.
I obviously support transit-oriented development. I believe it's the key to our future for young people to come in here that don't want a car. They want to be close to transit. They want smaller units. They want their own units. And what I would like to do is on the transit-oriented development, this is what this red purple line modernization is about, is to increase the affordability in these TOD developments. So I'm for it. We talk to developers. We talk to young people. They don't want a car in this neighborhood. They don't want the tickets. They don't want the insurance. They want the flexibility of Uber and Lyft and other forms and public transit. And ironically, Lakeview's population has remained zero growth in the last 10 years. We need growth. We need customers in these transit-oriented development. We need to enhance the vibrancy of our local economy with more density along transit stations.
Yeah. It's surprising to me that we've come this far in this conversation and we haven't talked much about schools and education, which is such an important issue facing our city. So I want to ask all of you about basically what is your top priority for the schools in Lakeview, and this is a mouthful, but bear with me. Top priority. And then I want your positions on expanding charter schools for or against, an elected school board for or against, and a moratorium on school closings. Starting, Tom, with you. What is your priority?
Could you repeat the three? You asked me three specific
expanding charter schools. And
no charter schools. I'm not a supporter of charter schools.
Elected school board.
And if there are charter schools, they need to be held to the same standard as public schools, citywide. I'm just talking about our neighborhood. We have reinvigorated the entire public school system in Lakeview. And thank you, Elizabeth, because they were going to close Nettlehorse School when I first started. So I'm glad that you're a parent that's investing in public education.
The parents did that. You did not do that.
Let the record show that I had an instrumental part of it. But that being said, we're also
elected school boards.
I want to just say that we're investing now $25 million in Lakeview High School.
Okay.
Okay. So that's really important for the K through 12 experience.
Okay.
Elected school board, hybrid school board. A portion, I think the mayor needs to be held accountable in his administration, but I also think he needs a robust elected school board, so let's say half and half.
And a moratorium on school closings? Or you?
I mean, my ward for sure. I cannot say that citywide.
Okay.
Because we lost, we've been losing population in this. You can't have a school that's built for 800 that has 80 people in it. We got to do something better about enhancing educational opportunities citywide.
Elizabeth, charter schools, elected school boards, and moratorium on school closings.
So moratorium on school closings, I do agree with Tom on this. Here no, but there are other areas of the city that we have to be considerate of. I've done a lot of work with some people in the south side of Chicago, and when we talk about our property taxes, and I'll make remarks like, well, I've talked to neighbors in Lakeview, and we understand our property taxes are higher because we offset the cost to help education and help schools in your area. A group of these guys, pastors, nonprofit leaders, started laughing. They're like, Elizabeth, you need to go back and talk to your white people and tell them to ask where their money's going, because it's not coming here. They gave me permission to say that. As far as charter schools are concerned, I do support charter schools, but for this neighborhood, I've talked to residents, I've heard their voice, they've said they don't support them. So I will always, as alderman, listen to what the voters want to do, what the residents and the taxpayers ask me to do, and I will lead with your voice.
Elected school board, quickly.
I am for elected school board. I think there's too much corruption for the mayor to have an opportunity to appoint his cronies.
Okay.
No way.
Thank you. Austin.
We have great K-8 schools in this neighborhood because parents have raised 6 figures in addition to what the CPS allocation is. So we need to make sure that we have proper school funding, and we need to look at the overall funding formula, because there's a lot of neighborhoods in the city where parents don't have the same wherewithal that we have in this neighborhood, and their kids deserve good schools too. So elected school board, yes. I think when we have an elected school board, we need to make sure it's districted, that people don't have to go citywide or run citywide, so that a parent, a teacher, an involved citizen can actually run and get elected to the school board.
What about charter schools?
Charter schools, I think charter schools need to be held to the same standards as public schools, and I support the right of teachers at charter schools to unionize.
And moratorium on school closings.
So I think, no.
No, okay. The time has come for our closing statements, and to remind you, 90 seconds each, and we'll start on the other end from where we began this conversation with Austin.
Thank you, Laura, for moderating tonight. Thank you, everyone, for taking time out of your evening to come here and listen to all of us. It's really refreshing to see this many people want to be involved in the democratic process. So thank you for being involved. I think the big issue in this election is, do we have a vision for the status quo, or do we want to change our city for the future? And we really have an opportunity in this election to change our city for the future. I was really fortunate a couple years ago to join Governor Quinn on a trade mission to China. And we talked about all the great things in Chicago. O'Hare Airport, you can fly around the continent in 4 hours. Our educational system, our transit system, arts, culture, restaurants, all these great things in our world-class city. The one thing we never talked about was our government. And we need a world-class government to go with our world-class city. And I pledge to you, if elected alderman, I will spend every day fighting corruption, fighting the insider deals that rob our city of the resources to pay for what we care about, which is education and public safety and public pensions. So I'm Austin Bates. I'm asking for your vote. Thank you.
Thank you everyone for coming here tonight. I am so grateful to have this opportunity to run for office and to try to represent you as your alderman. I'm actually very grateful to be here because my petitions were challenged by both of these guys, but I fought them both and here I am. I want to serve you again for 3 things. I want to ensure safe neighborhoods, strong schools, and I want to end corruption. It's time for a fresh start for Lakeview in the city of Chicago. I've met with candidates running all over this city. It's an exciting time for us. I hope voter turnout is as high as it was for the midterms because we have a rare opportunity to change the Chicago way. I choose you, and I hope you will choose me.
Thank you. Tom, you get the final word.
Thank you, and thank you for coming tonight, and thank you to the center, and to you, Laura. I'm a lifelong Chicagoan. I've been in this neighborhood 40 years. This neighborhood was not a shadow of where it is today because of the work that you and many people in this room with me helped redevelop this neighborhood. There was no Boys Town. I was one of the boys in Boys Town. I was one of the guys who made it, okay? I was the one who I bought an existing restaurant, and now I'm the small business person that had 7 operations at one time. But Lakeview is my home. I gave up a lot to do this job 16 years ago. I've been reelected 3 or 4 times. Yeah, I was appointed 1 month before an election with 5 candidates. But I work full-time for this community. I listen, I negotiate with our hospitals, with Wrigley Field, the delicate balance. Enough wasn't said about that tonight, but I'm telling you that I work every day with integrity. I work hard and play by the rules, and I hope that your confidence in me over these last number of years will continue as we move forward with improvements on public safety, education, new library, more police officers, and a future that's as optimistic what I believe the last 12, 14 years have been. We are the envy of the city of Chicago, and I'm proud to be your representative. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks to our candidates, and thanks to all of you for coming and for being such a great audience.